Tonight, want to get started tonight, so we'll have plenty of time in our classes. I've got several cards to read. I think it's important to read these because people take time to send them. And the first one is from Abigail. Where is Abigail? Where's she at? Right there. Y'all listen to this card. Thank you for being nice to me when I'm at church. I always get to learn new things. From Abigail. Love Abigail. Thank you. That is precious. I've got a card from Margie Cox thanking us for the fruit basket, and she said she's enjoying it. Also got one from Jimmy and Doris Staggs. We want to thank you for the beautiful fruit basket. We're really enjoying it. We also want to thank the pre-K through 6th grade for the Christmas ornament. It looks really pretty on our tree. We're so blessed to have a wonderful family at Petersville. May all of y'all have a good holiday season, and we wish them the best also. I've got one from Jeanette Hardison that's been shut in for several years now. I'm grateful for your love and kindness during this holiday season, and we thank her for that. Got one from the Central High School FCA from Brian Haddock. We're sending this letter to express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to your church for helping our Fellowship of Christian Athletes ministry. Your church has provided meals for our football team and has assisted us financially in ways that have been very beneficial. Your support has allowed our FCA to not only provide meals for all of our sports, but also have devotion time each time we do this. Over the past few years, this has allowed us, the Holy Spirit, to move in the lives of our athletes as well as our students and our school. Please know that we greatly appreciate everything your church has done for our FCA and our school in general. We humbly ask for your continued support and prayers as we move in the future. We know that God has big things in store for us, and we appreciate that from the central leader at the FCA. I've got a card from Jimmy and Sheila Marks. Thank you for the fruit basket you brought to my parents. It means a lot for them to be remembered. Please keep Jimmy in your prayers with his surgery coming up, and that will be this coming Tuesday on the 27th. Thank you so much for the prayers you've already sent. We're so very happy to be a part of this wonderful church family. We love you all from Jimmy and Sheila, and we hope that Jimmy's surgery goes well. You'll see on the opportunity worksheet, if you haven't already got one, if you've got any change in your address, phone number, email, anything like that, please be getting that to Susie for the upcoming membership booklet. And remind you once again, Sunday we'll have a service at 10 o'clock. There'll be no classes. There'll be no evening service. So if you've got family coming in, I hope that you'll bring them and that we can all worship together on Sunday morning. That'll be a really good service. Again, thank you for being here. Remember those of our number that are sick. I don't have any changes from what's on the opportunity worksheet, but do remember all of them. Doug?
If you'd like to go ahead and mark your books to number 923. This is our song of encouragement here in just a few minutes, number 923.
Holy life, be blessed Redeemer, this is my God's Son, longing and prayer. Let me outpour fed on the first treasures, Jesus my perfect likeness to bear. Holy life.
John chapter 10. John chapter 10. To celebrate or not to celebrate? That is the question. We talk about Christmas coming up on Sunday. We talk about what we do and what different families and places and cultures do on Christmas Day. And we have a lot of different ideas about that. And there's a lot of opinions. And then we think about, what actually takes place on December 25th. For a shorter devotional idea tonight, I just wanted to mention it this way. We don't know what Jesus was doing December 25th of his birth. We talk about, was Jesus born on December 25th? But I can pretty much tell you what he was doing on December 25th when he was about 33 years old, because the Bible tells us. And when Jesus was about 33 years old, at the end of what we call December, they call Kislev, and it kind of changes throughout the years, but he was participating in a religious festival. We know this because it says it in John chapter 10. John chapter 10, verse 22. At that time, the Feast of Dedication took place at Jerusalem, and it was winter. And Jesus was walking in the temple in the colonnade of Solomon, and the Jews gathered around him and said to him, and there's this discussion that takes place. And I don't want to focus on the discussion, I just want to focus on the events, the reality of what's going on. This Feast of Dedication. The Jews still celebrate the Feast of Dedication today. They don't call it the Feast of Dedication anymore, but if you have any Jewish friends, right now, this week, they're celebrating Hanukkah, which is the Feast of Dedication, or they might call it the Festival of Lights. And what's intriguing to me about this is that it is not a festival from the Old Testament. It is not a feast that God instituted under the law of Moses, or that you will find to read about anywhere in the Old Testament at all. In fact, it comes from a period between Malachi and Matthew, we call the intertestamental period, around 160 years before Jesus was born, when they had a dedication of the temple after it had been defiled by an evil person named Antiochus. And in order to show that he was better than the Jews and better than God, he sacrificed a pig on the altar in the temple. It was a profane and horrific event. And when they finally got rid of Antiochus, they rededicated the temple, and they did this thing that now you can read about, the menorah and the candles and the lights and all these kinds of things. And it's possible that in John chapter 8, when Jesus says, I am the light of the world, it's possible that that's one of the reasons he uses that terminology and uses that phrase, because he's in the midst of celebrating Hanukkah, even though it wasn't commanded or approved in the Old Testament as a Jew for him to do. And so when we think about what we're doing this week, or what we're doing on December 25th, and where that fits in to our faith, that gives us something to think about when Jesus is participating in a festival like that. And then you turn to Romans chapter 14, and we get Paul's advice, his inspired advice, on how to look at situations like this. And we're given some more information to consider that we should keep in mind, because it has to do with our faith. And it says in Romans 14, verse 5, one person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. The one who observes the day observes it in honor of the Lord. The one who eats, eats in honor of the Lord, since he gives thanks to God, while the one who abstains, abstains in honor of the Lord and gives thanks to God. And so when we ask the question to celebrate or not to celebrate, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. If it is spiritually and faithfully significant to you to recognize that all days are the same and that there was never a point in the Bible where it said Jesus was born on this day and we should honor that day, then your faith is demonstrated by not celebrating Christmas. And that faith that you have to God is honorable and admirable. On the other hand, if recognizing that there's an opportunity to commemorate and to honor and to remember something that was extremely significant in the history of mankind because of God's direct intervention into human history, and you choose to religiously observe that, and your faith is bolstered, and you do that, it is an honorable and an admirable thing. And I think that we are blessed to be able to sit in a room full of people where there are different families who are doing this in different ways right now. And Paul tells us in Romans 14, don't use that as an opportunity to fight with each other. Use that as an opportunity to congratulate one another on the strength of each other's faith. Is it an opportunity to learn and to talk about facts? Absolutely. If there's an opportunity to talk about whether or not Jesus factually was born on December 25th, that's a great thing to discuss. But then at the end of the day, if somebody says, we don't celebrate Christmas because, and then it is a faithful reason, then say, awesome. And then if on the other hand somebody says, we choose to celebrate Christmas because, and it's a faithful reason, then tell them that's awesome. This week, you have the opportunity to demonstrate your faith and to remember the difference between unity and uniformity, which are not the same. And this week, we celebrate our unity. And however you choose to do that, have a discussion with your family about why you do what you do or don't do from a matter of faith, and honor that. And then make sure to give credit where credit is due and honor those who might, in faith, do something differently. And that's how the church grows stronger. And that's how the church makes a good witness to the rest of the world around us. Tonight, if your light has not been shining as brightly as it should, this is the Feast of Dedication, is the festival of lights. If your candle has been dimmed, if your example has been darkened, we want to help you to relight it, to rekindle it, to do what you need to do to be that witness in the world, to be that light shining from a dark place. And if you need help with that tonight, you can let us know what you need at this time, if you'd like to, by coming forward as we stand and as we sing together.
I hear thy welcome voice that calls me, Lord, to thee, for cleansing in thy precious blood that flows on Calvary. I am coming, Lord, coming now to thee.
That?
the little red button on the
Okay.
inside.
Yeah, I did. I got it turned on.
I just didn't know.
Thank
because I
you.
had no-
I figured you'd do something. Do what?
Testing.
Yep, it's working. This mic looks like an extension cord when I get through rolling it up and taking it out. It's all curled up. But you know who curled this up last time? I did. Sunday night. Bear with me here a second. Any of you ever wonder how an extension cord gets so tangled up? I spent about 5 or 10 minutes the other day trying to get a big long one uncurled. How is everybody tonight? Whew. It's loud. See if I can get this put up somehow. What have y'all been studying the last 5 weeks? Anybody remember? Miss May? Fruit of the Spirit. Fruits of the Spirit. What was the first one that we talked about? Found in Galatians. Come on, come on. Y'all got to help me tonight. I won't sit up here and talk. What's the first one? Love. Love. Can you give me a one-word definition of love? That's 3 words, but I like that. You know, it's hard to define love. That's hard to define.
Well, I could say God, but that's everything.
Yeah, that's true. You either have love or you don't. It's kind of one of those things that's it's part of who you are. The next one you talked about was what? Starts with a J. Joy. How would you describe joy? Speak louder. Happy. Okay. All right. What else? Grandchildren. Amen to that. What else? I want to give you a different word. I think you have joy when you're content. How many of you are content? Contentment brings joy because you're not wanting all the time because you're content. You're content where you're at. You're content what you got. You're content with what you've got to eat. You're content with most all things in life. What's the next one we talked about? Love, joy, peace. What does it mean to have peace? I think you could say again, contentment. What else is peace? Calm. I like for it to be calm, don't you, Miss Jane? Peace in our life. Love, joy, peace. What's the next one? Patience. Whoo! How many of you's got patience? How many of you had patience with your kids all the time? Now that they're grown? How many of you have patience? Those of you that are blessed with grandkids, how many of you have patience with your grandkids all the time? Okay, I got 2 back there that do. I do most of the time. Sometimes they can get a little rowdy, but they get away with things that my 3 boys didn't get away with. What's next after patience? Well, the next one is goodness. And then the next one is kindness. And they kind of mirror each other. They can be different in different ways. And then the next one is faithfulness. And there's not a chapter in this book on faithfulness. I think they run out of chapters. But how would you describe faithfulness? Loyal? What else? True to your belief. I like that. What about doing all of the other fruits of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, kindness, gentleness. That brings us to the next one, lesson 51 in our book. I hope y'all have enjoyed the devotional book this year. If you haven't been using it, I would really encourage you to use the one that we're going to hand out Sunday as we begin the new year. But we're going to be talking about gentleness tonight. Gentleness. What does it mean to be gentle? All of it rolled up in a tortilla shell, isn't it? Yeah. A lot of these characteristics do mirror each other. The definition in the dictionary of gentleness is mildness of manners or disposition. How many of you in here tonight, and you don't have to raise your hand if you want to, I'd love to see, but how many of you think you have conquered gentleness? I like Miss Jane's honesty. She's conquered it. Joe, have you? You hadn't? But you've got a good example, hadn't you? Mildness of manners or disposition. What do you think of when you think of someone being gentle? There's something that comes to my mind first and foremost. Being humble, okay? There's something that comes to my mind. Turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. Okay, gentle as a lamb, exactly. Yep, I've heard that. I've heard that too. Turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. Let's look at verses 1 through 7, and I think you'll see where I'm going with this. It says, "For you yourselves know, brethren, that our coming to you was not in vain. But even after we had suffered before and were spitefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we were bold in our God to speak to you the gospel of God in much conflict. For our exhortation did not come from error or uncleanliness, nor was it in deceit. But as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, even so we speak, not as pleasing men, but God who tests our hearts. For neither at any time did we use flattering words, as you know, nor a cloak for covetousness. God is witness. Nor did we seek glory from men, either from you or from others, when we might have made demands as apostles of Christ. But we were gentle among you, just as what? Just as a nursing mother cherishes her own children." When I think of gentle, I think of a mother with a newborn. Think of yourself when you first held your child, whether it's male or female in here, Or think of yourself when you first held that grandchild. Did you just pass it along real hurriedly? You did it how? You did it real gentle. You did it with gentleness. That's what comes to my mind when I think about being gentle. Turn to, and we have great examples. Turn to Matthew chapter 11, and somebody read verse 29 for us if you would. Matthew 11:29. For I am meek and lowly in heart, and my version says, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. Meek and gentle are the same thing, aren't they? So who is this speaking here? It's Christ speaking. We have a great example. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek or gentle and lowly in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. Can you think of an example of Jesus when He was gentle? Give me some examples. Okay? And His disciples wasn't too proud of that, were they? But He says, unless we become as little children, you shall not what? Enter the kingdom of heaven. What's another example of Christ being gentle? Woman at the well. Thank you, Miss Jane. That's exactly where I was going. You must have read my lesson. Turn to John chapter 8. Did Jesus ever... I'm trying to think, and I could be wrong. Did He ever ridicule someone harshly in ugly tones? I can't think of any. Now we know when he overthrew the tables in the temple, He was angry. But I think any of us would have been. That doesn't mean that He was disrespectful, but He did overthrow the tables. But look in John chapter 8 here, starting in verse 3. And look how Jesus handled this situation. It says, then the scribes and Pharisees brought to Him a woman caught in adultery, and when they had set her in the midst, they said to Him, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be what? Should be stoned. But what do you say? And this they said, testing Him, that they might have something of which to accuse Him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with His finger, as though He did not hear. So when they continued asking Him, He raised Himself up and said to them, He who is without sin among you, let him what? Throw the first stone. And again He stooped down and wrote on the ground. And those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. And when Jesus had raised Himself up and saw no one but the woman, He said to her, Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you? And she said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. He did it in a what way? He did it in a gentle, compassionate way. Turn to Titus chapter 3. Titus chapter 3, verses 1 and 2 says, Remind them to be subject to rulers and authorities, to obey, to be ready for every good work, to speak evil of no one, to be peaceable, and what? Gentle, showing all humility to all men. How hard is it to show gentleness and humility to all men? It's difficult. Yes, it is. How many of you have raised your voice to someone this week? Hey, it happens. It happens. We miss the what? We miss the mark a lot. We're human. We're going to do it. How many of you think you'll probably raise your voice between now and Sunday to somebody? Now think about it. Most of you are going to have kids and grandkids and I don't know who all else, but usually we harsh out at who? Those we love the most is who we usually harsh out on. So just be mindful of this lesson when things get a little strange between now and Sunday. Because it's going to happen. When you get several folks together, you're going to have some conflicts. So just keep this gentleness in mind. And then turn to 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter chapter 3. And I love these verses here. And it's been talking about wives and husbands. Wives, likewise be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives, when they observe their chaste conduct accompanied by fear. Do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel. Rather, let it be hidden. Let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a what? Gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. Y'all have heard me tell this before, but we grew up, Mom taking us to church. And Dad would go every now and then. And Mom would ask him, are you going to go to church with us today? And sometimes he would and sometimes he wouldn't. But she wouldn't harp on him. But she just kept encouraging. And he soon started coming more. And after about 30 years of becoming, he became a Christian. So, I tell that story quite often to encourage some of you that maybe if your husbands don't come, to continue to what? Encourage. Encourage them. And let them see the example that you are. Somebody read Proverbs 15, verse 1. What does a harsh word usually do? If somebody speaks a harsh word to me, what's the first rebuttal? A rebuttal is usually another harsh word. Right back. And we've got to try to learn to control. That's hard. Oh, it's hard. But we've got to try to get past that. How many of you in here, husbands and wives, have ever had a harsh word with your mate? Okay? Me and Marcia used to have some harsh words, but I reckon we finally just got so old that it's not even worth the bother. We just, whatever. So just chill out. But hopefully we can all get past that. We know a harsh word brings another harsh word, but a soft answer turns away what? That is so true. That is so true. I love what the author here in this chapter says. He says, someone said meekness or gentleness is not weakness. Meekness is not weakness. It often requires much more bravery and inner strength to be meek and gentle than aggressive and assertive. How many of you will agree with that? It takes a whole lot more bravery to be meek and gentle than aggressive and assertive. It takes a lot more faith. It does.
I'm sure everybody grew up different from me, but I grew up in a family with 70 cousins and families around and competitive and men, among men, and things to do.
Yeah.
And the way of life is not conducive to what you're teaching. Now, that's been a long time ago. Unfortunately, God has drove me into a different place. But there was no meekness, no weakness, there was nothing. It's most of America was that way. That I know of in Alabama. People had to work hard. They had to stand for themselves.
Took up for themselves.
So that's where my faith, I think, has lifted me out of that challenge.
Right.
Of growing up in that. We live what we learn. And that's what I was taught. So,
And you said you had how many first cousins?
70 cousins.
I thought I had a bunch. I had 48 first cousins, counting both sides.
With 89 direct descendants.
Whew. That's a bunch.
I was on the bottom of both sides. Both my parents were young.
But, meekness is not weakness. It takes a strong person to be meek and gentle. If you think of somebody in this congregation that's meek and gentle, who would come to your mind? Brother Glenn Dupey, wouldn't he? I hear that said every time I've ever brought it up. That's the first name that comes out is Mr. Dupey. What is it about him? He does. It's amazing, and we could learn a lot from him. The author here also goes on to say, try this with your family, church members, people at work, your boss, your fellow employees. The next time a situation gets quote-unquote charged, what are they saying there? What does it mean to get charged? Gets heated, gets riled up. He says, try being the one who is gentle. And he says it works because it's a Christian principle. And that's so true. It works because it's a Christian principle. Turn to James chapter 3. He has a lesson in here on this week's study about gentleness among God's people. You would think of all people that it would be easiest and more gentle among God's people than anybody else. But how many of you have ever had some quote-unquote heated discussions or arguments with fellow church members at some time in your life? It's not fun, promise you. It's not fun. Been there, done that. But normally, listen to what he says here. He says, How often have you seen people demanding certain things be gentle about it? They push, they steer, they aggressively agitate. If in the midst of chaos, moderation is sought, whom do we seek? And then it says, a wise one. But people that are demanding certain things or have a certain agenda, are they usually gentle about it? No. No. It's my way or the highway.
And I think you correct, you throw out a big difference. The two agenda are working on, working God.
Exactly. Exactly. I remember, and I use things from Underwood Ballfield a lot because I spent 20 plus years over there. But when you work with 700 kids, and how many parents do you think we were working with when it was 700 kids? Well, in a perfect world, it would have been 1,400. But we were working with probably 21 or 2,500 parents. And there were a lot of, now you got to remember, this is all a volunteer organization. So we're there because why? We want to be. We love what we're doing. We're trying to do something good for the kids. But you always had a few every year that had a personal agenda. And it was for, it wasn't for the good of the whole, it was for the good of who? Their child. Their child. And what was good for their child was not necessarily what was good for the whole. And we had to have some meetings with some people like that. Sometimes they turned out real good, and sometimes we come home real late. So I'll just leave it at that. So, but you know, personal agendas for the wrong reason are not good, and we need to try to practice gentleness as much as we can in those situations. How many of you have read this week's lesson for today? Okay, I'm gonna read this to you because I think this is really good. One of the most ferocious beasts and deadliest of all predators is looming in some of the old nasty streams. Who would it be? Crocodiles. It says stories from every place they are known to exist include tales of horror. Not only to the usual prey, but to human beings as well. The largest ever recorded was just over 20 feet long. While appearing to be lethargic, crocodiles can move with much speed on land and in the water. Now add in the most powerful biting force in nature. How many pounds per square inch do you think a crocodile's got? 3,700 pounds per square inch. It says humans have about 150 per square inch. Hyenas, tigers, and lions about 1,000 pounds per square inch. And sharks, on the average, have about 1,300 pounds per square inch. So this crocodile is almost 3 times powerful jaw strength than the crocodile. It says, they remind me of Satan. As beasts migrate and cross rivers, the crocodiles slaughter them mercilessly. As we journey towards the prize of life, we have many obstacles, and the devil is seeking who he may devour. However, the intimidating, reckless, destructive crocodile with its unimaginable bite force can be one of the gentlest of all creatures. How do you think that can be? Listen to this. When the crocodile eggs hatch, the newborns start making croaking noises so the mother will hear them. Other crocs hear them also and often cannibalize their own helpless kind. But the mother hurries to the nest side and starts gathering the babies in her what? In her mouth. with 3,700 pounds per square inch pressure. She gathers them in her mouth and gently takes them to relatively safety of the river. Her bite force is throttled, for her babies' lives are at stake. And the whole point of him telling this, if such a river monster can tame its jaws while it's got those eggs in there, so we ought to be able to control our what? Our tongue. We ought to be able to control our tongues when dealing with those not as mature. What does it mean we ought to be able to control our tongues when dealing with those not as mature? What does that mean? We know in the book of James it tells us that the tongue no man can tame. It's like what? Turn to James chapter 3, verse 5. It says, even so the tongue is a little member and boasteth great things. So see how great a what? A forest a little fire kindles. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no man can tame the tongue. It's an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, what? These things ought not so to be. But we're what? We're human. We mess up. We slip up. We don't tame that thing. And we talked about a while ago, when somebody bites at us, our human nature is to do what, Adam? Bite back at them. That's human nature. We've got to, and I'm talking to myself here too, first and foremost, we've got to try to get past that somehow. Anybody got a recipe?
I think it goes back to that trust and faith. The older I get, the more I realize that it's not up to me. My opinion don't mean as much as I want it to anybody else. Okay? I don't care who it is, children, grandchildren, anybody in the room. What God's going to do for me if I do what He says. Because I can't do it with my tongue. I can't do it with my mind. I can only do what, or only achieve.
Right.
What He achieves for me. And me through Him.
How did you put that first part? That your opinion doesn't mean as much to anybody else as it does. I like that. Because that's true. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And the older I get, I understand that. I've got my opinion, you got your opinion. Sherry's got her opinion, Gary's got one. You know, Mr. Dolores has got one, Joe's got one, Roy's got one, Donna's got one. You know, and I don't know about y'all, but my opinion won't buy me nothing. Will it, y'all? But we've all got one. And I'm bad about telling people my opinion sometimes. I've got to work on that. I think the older I get, the worse I get.
We have to trust ourselves, have knowledge,
Yeah.
intelligence, and have some background. But we also have to realize that it's valuable to us.
I, Yes. Okay.
Again, I've been fighting all these people all these years to get my voice heard. Now it's there, and then I have to look at it differently in order to even, I sound harsh to people without trying to sound harsh to people. I just go through my mouth, I sound harsh to parents or to some people.
Do you ever get in trouble talking to Pat? It's sometimes Marcia tells me it's not what I said, but it's the tone I said it in. Okay. All right. Pat.
But they think they only hear my mind and my
I,
heart, you know?
yeah. I try to base my opinions on common sense. Do y'all? Yeah, that's true. But I mean, there's so many things that go on in this world today that there's just no common sense behind them. And I guess that's where I get frustrated and voice my opinion more than what I should, because there's no common sense used anymore. But these crocodiles, they tame that fierce 3,700 pounds per square inch of pressure, and they carry these little eggs in their mouth. That just amazed me when I read that story. We can learn from that. We don't need to bite and devour one another. We need to be more gentle. For those of you that hadn't read tomorrow's devotional, I'm going to go ahead and read it because I think it fits right in with what we're studying. How many of you in here have ever had horses? Okay, 4, 5, 6. Okay. It says a beautiful horse spent all its adult life in a pen on about an acre or about a half an acre of land. It was well kept, well fed, and allowed freedom within its boundaries. It was a beautiful golden palomino. The horse was no danger to anyone and enjoyed those sugar cubes that some gave him through the fence. He seemed to delight in children. The horse was sold, and the new owners come to move him. Bear in mind that this horse had never been out of its enclosure, this half acre, its entire adult life. This horse didn't want what? Change. Didn't want change. Not necessarily it didn't want change, but it didn't know change. It had always been on this half acre of land. It says the new owners were loud and boisterous and frightening. There was a bank on one side of the lot, and they backed a trailer up to the fence there to load the horse. They cut the wire in the fence at this point and proceeded to try and get a rope on the horse and get him in the trailer. Unfamiliar with a rope or bridle, he ran from them. They finally got a rope on him and attempted to get him to the trailer, and he refused. That's when they started cursing him, jerking on the rope, and shoving him to no avail. That horse was doing what? He was rebelling. He didn't want any part of it. Then they started to beat him. They beat him until blood was dripping off his wonderful coat, but he would not budge. Then they sent for a genuine cowboy. What do you think the cowboy done? He was gentle. He asked them to please leave. He talked gently to the horse, rubbed his neck and muzzle, took off the rope, and after about 30 minutes of working with him, led him right into the trailer. And this is his whole point right here. Be sure and don't miss this. He said, there are people in this world with confined thinking. They are secure where they are and happy with life. That's the way this horse was. In our attempts to move them to Christ, we must not torment them, belittle them, or beat them up verbally. But we've got to win them with what? gentleness. Gentleness of word and action, and hopefully calm them and open up for good opportunities to talk to them. And he closes, to be like Christ is to be gentle. So I want to encourage you. How many of you's got family get-togethers tomorrow? How many of you's got some Friday? We've got some Friday. Saturday? I got some Saturday. Sunday? Okay. I want to encourage you to be gentle. Be gentle. And next Wednesday night, I'm going to ask you how that went. Because the last lesson of the year is on self-control. So gentleness and self-control have a lot in common, don't they? So see how you're going to be in your gentleness and self-control. So, do what? Seriously, I hope all of you have a great Christmas. I hope you have a good time with family. And I hope that you'll all be here Sunday morning and bring family with you. I just think that'll be a good way to spend Christmas morning. Any comments? I appreciate y'all's suggestions, your comments, those that read. A lot of times people say that people want to contribute. Anything anybody'd like to comment on before we close? I appreciate that, Miss Gertie. Let's have a word of prayer. Dear Father, we do